The Liberals tried to sort out their own affairs and deal with Donald Trump at the same time. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The top news stories
and conversations that matter to you.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Liberals in Ottawa have a lot on their plates these days. They're trying to figure out how to replace their leader, Justin Trudeau, and at the same time trying to figure out how to best respond to the threats posed by the incoming U.S. President Donald Trump. And a lot of it was on display yesterday as Liberal MPs gathered in a chilly nation's capital for a 6-hour meeting. On the race to replace Trudeau, we know one high-profile person is out. That's Dominic LeBlanc, one of Trudeau's closest friends, and the new minister of everything in Trudeau's flailing government. LeBlanc told news reporters he can't run for the Liberal leadership now, given the threat of tariffs.
I was genuinely touched by caucus colleagues and Liberals across the country who encouraged me to consider seeking the leadership. I know everybody says that, but in my case, happily, it was true. So I'm very grateful for that, and I spent time this morning reaching out to those colleagues to tell them how much I appreciated it. But last night, and then after sleeping on it this morning, I decided that the most important thing I should do over the next few months is my job as Minister of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs. So I've already reached out to Premier Ford, for example. Hope to see him in Toronto in the next couple of days, and I will be solely focused on the real economic threat that American tariffs represent to the Canadian economy and to Canadian workers. It's a full-time job. I'm lucky to have it.
The news about LeBlanc's decision disappointed some Liberals who hope he will change his mind. This is Liberal MP Judy Sgro.
Dominic is my first one on the list. I think he's been a great member, and I think he'd be a great Prime Minister.
What do you want to see in a leader, and who's second on your list?
I don't have a second. I was counting on Dominic. Interested in Mark Carney, but that'll depend on the rules and how they get set up. But it's an important decision, and we don't have a lot of time to make that decision.
As for other Liberals who are still mulling it over, the Industry Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, says he's still thinking about it.
I'm seriously considering a bid for the leadership, but we need to know the rules. So obviously, there'll be a time to reflect on that as the party is putting the rules together. But it's true that we need an ambitious Canada. We need a confident Canada. We need to present a vision of a country that can win in the 21st century, an economic vision, a vision of hope, and certainly that's something that I've been thinking for a long time. But, we'll see what the rules are, and then we'll have more to say in the coming days.
A name that's not at the top of anyone's list as a possible successor to Justin Trudeau is Jonathan Wilkinson, the Natural Resources Minister, but he says he's thinking about a run as well.
For me, it's about, I am not somebody who has been out organizing prior to the Prime Minister making his decision. That's just not me. So is there sufficient support within the caucus? And is there sufficient support with respect to the networks across the country? I'm doing a job that I think is a pretty important one right now, especially vis-a-vis President-elect Trump. Energy and natural resources is at the heart of the conversation we are having with the Americans. So I need to ensure that I can be competitive before I would walk away from the job that I have.
It's no secret that the Foreign Affairs Minister, Mélanie Joly, could run, but she says she hasn't made up her mind yet.
So for me, right now, the question I'm asking myself is, in the context of Canada-US, is where can I have the biggest impact? And so, of course, all of these different considerations that you're asking me are part of my reflection.
When are you going to make a decision? What else is factoring into your consideration?
Well, everything. When this is such an important decision, of course, you have to think about your family, your loved ones, my own projects to become a mother, and at the same time to be able to defend Canada's interests in the context of the Canada-US administration.
Parlez-nous de ce que vous mesurez.
So this is something that not only I'm very concerned about, but we have to be extremely ready because the threat of tariffs is real.
It was just a few days ago that Donald Trump talked again about using economic force against Canada and mused once more about Canada becoming the 51st state. Canada's immigration minister, Mark Miller, thinks that's a big joke. He took a few shots at the incoming Trump administration and the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre.
Well, I think the Prime Minister said it right. There isn't a chance in hell it's going to happen. They'd have to find us on a map, but it'll take them maybe a few years. Look, I said a couple weeks ago, this is like an episode of South Park. I'll start to get worried when they confirm Eric Cartman as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Like, this is silly. It's unbecoming, frankly, of a president, any president that would say that. But we do have to take it seriously, and I think that is something that we'll keep doing. I've heard condemnations from different leaders, and I saw Pierre Poilievre's yesterday, and I don't believe him until he repudiates people in his party that are tippy-toeing with the concept of annexing to the U.S. That includes Kevin O'Leary, who was a leadership colleague of his. That includes Preston Manning, who was a mentor to Pierre Poilievre. So when he says to them, I don't want you in my party, I don't want votes from people that would support you, I'll maybe start believing Pierre Poilievre.
The Liberal Party's board of directors is expected to meet today to go over the rules for a Liberal leadership race. There are concerns that the current rules for that race don't go far enough to protect it from foreign interference. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
With our friend on the right side of things, Michael Taube is a syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Welcome back.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm just great. Great to hear from you. Let's talk about your column. It is in today's National Post, working from the assumption that Pierre Poilievre becomes the next Prime Minister of Canada, and he's the person that has to deal with Donald Trump. You have some words of advice for Pierre Poilievre on how he could successfully do that. What would you say?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously, they're just my own thoughts, but I think what I've tried to do in this column, which was a little bit different than, say, the reaction we heard from some of our fellow pundits, commentators, radio hosts, TV hosts, and others who are basically, their fists were up, their anger was high. Oh, we must basically tell Donald Trump to just take a hike. We're not going to listen to any of this. I mean, to me, when I saw stuff like that coming out, Rob, I mean, that's the worst possible tactic you can take. Generally speaking, even if we take Donald Trump out of the equation, it's not how you deal with issues. Even if you're irritated with something, you can still take a very strong position and have strong ideas and whatnot, but you also have to be realistic about who is on the other side of the bargaining table and how you deal with that person. Even if it's a conventional politician, there are certain ways to handle things, and then there are other ways not to. Now, with Donald Trump, who would be regarded as more of an unconventional politician, it makes things a lot more different and sometimes, for some leaders, more difficult. We know that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who is on his way out at some point in the next few weeks, we hope, he couldn't handle it. He was unable to handle it from literally the very beginning. From his first meeting with Trump during Trump's first term, which started in 2016, 2017 and on, he just proved that he was unable to work with him to figure things out. And quite frankly, it's actually very simple to understand why. We had a weak and ineffective prime minister who just couldn't handle things and couldn't negotiate properly, and quite frankly, couldn't lead this country properly. And that is part of the key of why many people in this country have turned against him, and why many members, a majority of the Liberal caucus, also did too. Pierre Poilievre, which one would assume will become prime minister before long later this year, unless something unusually epic occurs, is a very different politician, as I discuss in my column. Far more clever and intuitive as a politician, a far better communicator. His communication skills are excellent, as you and I have talked about, and I've talked about with others. He's also a strong leader. He has strong policy ideas, and he has a clear direction of where he wants Canada to go now in the future. So some of the things that I go through in the column are just ideas and ways that Poilievre could actually directly deal with them. And one of the lines
For example, you say he should think big. What do you mean by that?
Well, he should think big. I mean, that comes from The Art of the Deal. That's a quote directly from Donald Trump and Tony Schwartz's book that was written numerous years ago, but some people may have read. And from the quote I took in there, and I just took one piece of it, but I'll read it to you. I like thinking big. I always have. Trump wrote in one chapter. To me, it's very simple. If you're going to be thinking anyway, you might as well think big. So for me, and that's the way Donald Trump has always acted, if you look at the 25% tariff, well, that's thinking big. Basically, he's, putting something up, an obstruction, causing a bit of a storm. It will force the other side to either think or rethink their policies and ideas. It will lead to discussions, negotiations, and come out, in his mind, that being Trump's mind, with something better. So Poilievre has to basically work along those lines. Now, I'm not suggesting that Poilievre should change his tune about, Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. He's opposed to it. Most Canadians are opposed to it. We get that. And he came out, fighting, and that's good. But he also has to be smart with his negotiations. As one of my lines is, to negotiate with Trump, you have to negotiate like Trump, which means that you don't have to be a carbon copy, but you have to think, what would this guy want? What would he be interested in? And what is he looking for? And one of the biggest things he's looking for, Rob, is safety and security at the Canada-U.S. border. That has been a major issue since the very beginning. I did a quote from True Social back in November. He said this directly, that one of the reasons he's putting on these tariffs to Canada and Mexico is because he's furious about, illegal immigration and illegal drugs like fentanyl coming across the border. It's a major issue. Justin Trudeau and the Liberals did nothing to resolve this, absolutely nothing at all. And for that reason, he needs to obviously get what he wants to improve things. And my guess is that then the tariffs will either gradually or completely come off. Pierre Poilievre, thankfully, believes in safety and security at the border. He's talked about it a lot in it, both domestically and internationally. He looks at those issues much more wisely than others do. Certainly other Canadian politicians that we have right now, this is exactly what we need. Also, to think big, he's got to come up with ideas and ways to work with Donald Trump in terms of how can we improve things between Canada and the U.S. We know that Trump is certainly a big believer that Canada and the U.S. should be more strongly tied economically, or an economic union. Well, great. There's one issue you can talk about. I also talked about other free market-oriented ideas. How about eliminating supply management in the dairy industry? Something that Donald Trump and other U.S. Republicans have been blasting against for years, and quite frankly, most conservatives are opposed to. That would be a great way to sort of show that if Pierre Poilievre suggested it, it might be a great negotiating tool or bargaining tool. Reducing foreign ownership restrictions. That has been something that's been talked about a ton of times around here, and unfortunately, no one has ever gotten through one way or the other. So along those lines are ways that he can basically handle things. And if you do that and you show a good faith and a willingness to work together, you're going to make headway with Donald Trump. And above all, to just tidy it up quickly, the most important thing he does, he cannot lose patience with Trump. Other world leaders have. We've seen what the consequences of that is. So basically, Pierre Poilievre needs to be proactive rather than reactive. Come in with a good game plan, good ideas, defend Canada, look at the free market, propose small C conservative ideas the two men can work on together. You will find that, in my opinion, will be a far better solution and dealing with, obviously, safety and security of the border than Justin Trudeau running off to Mar-a-Lago in late November and basically saying, if you put on those tariffs, Mr. Trump, the economy is going to be destroyed. That's the best he could come up with at a dinner meeting that was held by several people.
Well,
Pierre Poilievre, to his credit, will not do something like that.
When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about more about Justin Trudeau, whether Justin Trudeau is just the latest progressive politician to face a political demise because there is a wider backlash against progressive politics right now. We'll ask Michael Taube if he has any thoughts on that. When we come back, I'm sure he does. This is News Radio.
critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Back with Michael Taube, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. So you follow international affairs, you follow conservative politics all over the world.
Right.
I'm wondering if you think Justin Trudeau's unpopularity may be part of a wider backlash against progressive politicians, generally speaking. Kamala Harris losing to Donald Trump. Macron, not popular in France.
Right.
I don't know maybe about some of the other countries. But what do you think, Michael?
Well, there are other countries as well. I mean, Germany, their left-wing government just fell, and they're going through new elections later next month. And even if you look at Britain, which was the reverse, where the Labour government won a huge majority, but is now not necessarily fighting for their lives. When you have a supermajority, it's not going to change much, but they are definitely struggling with all the groomer gangs controversy that's been going on, and they're taking the brunt of it for obvious reasons why. They've sat in power long enough to deal with it. You can certainly say that the pendulum is swinging in that direction. I think that is fair to say. But I think with Justin Trudeau, you have to sort of look at it in a separate way as well. Yes, the pendulum is swinging, so it doesn't help him. So a lot of the things that we saw, for the past few years, and certainly during COVID-19, where you had a lot of far-left ideas, woke ideology, political correctness, and other things come to the forefront, social justice, racial awareness, blah, 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 blah. There was a lot of things that were discussed, talked about, protested, and that benefited people like a Justin Trudeau, a politician who was definitely left of center. At the same time, though, you have to be fair and recognize the fact that Trudeau was prime minister long before a lot of this happened, which means that it was already part of a trend that in this country, where progressive and liberal ideas tend to reign supreme, he benefited from that, especially because he was able to change the electorate or the electorate's thinking in 2015 after nearly 10 years of my old friend and boss Stephen Harper and a conservative government in power. So historically from Canada, that's not surprising. But Trudeau really is the master of his own fate in this case, more than anything else. Trudeau is just an incompetent leader. He was horrible from day one on the job on, and you can really make that argument. He proved that he was mediocre, ineffective, delusional. He couldn't handle himself domestically or internationally. He was largely the master of his own fate because even if the trends are changing, the pendulum's swinging, there you have it. It's him too.
Okay. So if he's looking for someone to blame, look in the mirror, I guess.
You got it.
Okay. Very interesting, Michael. Thank you so much for today.
My pleasure.
And we
as
will
always.
speak soon. Bye-bye. Yeah. Michael Taube. You can read him in today's National Post. He's a syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, with us every Thursday. Here on Now You Know, our Newsday panel is coming up right after the latest breaking news. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
It is time for our Newsday panel. Jordan Paquette is senior consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group, originally from Prince Edward Island, usually works out of Ottawa, but today is in Florida. Hi, Jordan.
Hey, Rob, how are you? Good to
Are
see
you you're
bit.
visiting Mar-a-Lago? You're visiting Mar-a-Lago? Are you?
Well, I tried
Jordan?
to, but then saw Trump was in Washington, so I thought I'd grab as much orange juice as I could before we put the counter tariffs on.
Okay. So where are you in Florida?
Down at St. Pete's Beach, just outside of Tampa. Area was hit very hard by the hurricane, so there's still a lot of renovations and cleanup happening from down here.
Right. So can you see the Gulf of America where you are?
I'm looking out of the window at it right now. I might go take a dive into it here.
All right.
right after we're done here.
Look, I don't mean to interrupt your your winter getaway, but thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Chris Sims is with us, the Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, former journalist, colleague of mine, staffer on Parliament Hill. How are you?
I'm good, but I'm not in Florida, and now I'm wondering, are they going to have to go back and change all those country songs about the Gulf of Mexico? What are they doing?
What does Jimmy Buffett do now? Yeah, okay. Where are you, Chris?
I'm in snowy Lethbridge, and not
Lethbridge.
in Florida.
It does not resemble Florida at all, I suspect.
No
In
palm
Lethbridge,
trees here.
no.
Maybe the
Okay,
politics
all
is
right.
pretty similar, actually, but no palm trees.
Let's jump right into things here. Jordan, let's start with you. Pick your brain. What do you think about what is known so far about the contenders to replace Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party? And in particular, I'd like to get your take on Dominic LeBlanc's decision to stay out of it while others try to convince him to stay in it. What do you think?
Sure. I think with Mr. LeBlanc, I mean, he's made his decision. It seems like I doubt that's going to change at this point. I think a lot of Liberals sort of see him as perhaps a leader inside a caucus. But at the end of the day, if you put a name like LeBlanc or anybody in the current cabinet forward, they have the baggage of being attached to this Trudeau government, having voted for its policies, having advanced the unpopular policies over the last number of years. So it really gives no advantage to anybody beyond that. Now, I will say on just the general sense of it, I was quite surprised to see that I don't even believe the Liberal executive has met yet. I believe they're meeting today to actually start.
They're meeting today,
yeah, meeting today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you'll start to see more names obviously come forward into the weekend. I think obviously lots of calls are being made to scoop up some of the key organizers around the country. But we're still a few days away from seeing who's all going to dive in.
Okay. Well, what do you think about what you're hearing so far about, names, people who are in, people who might be in, people who are not in? Chris, what do you think?
I was a little surprised to hear that Mr. LeBlanc isn't throwing his hat in because he's quite popular. However, then you got to start thinking about strategy. If you want to be the Liberal leader when things are good, do you really want to jump in right now? So
right.
I think it's pretty smart on his part to keep his cards close at this point. He's also just a very friendly person, and I think he gets along well with people, which is the one smart move I can say this government has made is sending him down to Washington to try to smooth things out with President Trump. He's a good talker, friendly, kind of a man's man. So I would pick him to go do that for the Liberals too. As far as the leadership contenders go, we're hearing all sorts of names, including out west here with former BC Premier Christy Clark.
I wanted to ask you about that, Chris. I mean, you lived in British Columbia. You were born and raised in British Columbia. You were there when Christy Clark was the Premier of British Columbia of the now defunct Liberal Party of British Columbia. What kind of Liberal is Christy Clark? Some people look. Some of the establishment Liberals in Ottawa are already trying to stick a knife in her. Jean-Yves Duclos, for example, was saying yesterday, well, the leader of the Liberal Party absolutely has to be bilingual, has to speak French, and has to understand Quebec issues. I mean, that's not Christy Clark, in my opinion. But she's an outsider. In fact, that she's not a Trudeau Liberal. So what kind of Liberal is she?
She's kind of a weird chimera of a BC Liberal. And so I don't know her personally, but she's obviously a smart person and a quick study. She has been taking intensive French lessons. Yeah, so that's been going on for quite some time out here, out west, over on the other side of the Rockies. What I find interesting is what she is going to do with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's key legislation, which is the carbon tax. The carbon tax is set to go up here, Rob, on April 1st. So a week, imagine, you sit in Parliament March 24th, week later you hike everyone's taxes, then you hit the campaign trail. And so she was Premier of BC under her own carbon tax for years, and it was not revenue neutral. Thank you very much. Huge cheerleader for that. So that'll be a really bumpy
for
entry.
The carbon
However,
tax.
She's a great communicator. So
right. On this idea, Christy Clark's been taking French lessons. Look, take it from me as an Anglo in Quebec, who has been trying to speak French for 40 years. Okay? The older you get, the harder it is to learn a new language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the fact that she's trying. Don't get me wrong. But I would ask you, if she found herself in a Tim Hortons in Drummondville or Val-d'Or or Rimouski, could she even order a coffee in French?
I don't know.
Let alone carry on a conversation with the locals. Okay, it's one thing to say, well, maybe you could pass the civil service exam and say you're bilingual, but are you bicultural? Okay? In fact, I would predict that watching her take part in a leadership debate in French would be torture. And that's not a knock against her political skills. That's just reality. And
but
the reality of the
the
reality of the politics is of the Liberal Party is that to be the leader, you have to be bilingual.
And you have to be. So then, are we now excluding everybody basically from out west who doesn't speak French from being a Liberal Party leader anymore? If you have to be bicultural, to your point, Rob, that means that the rest of us are out.
Well, a few months of French lessons is not going to be enough for her to, I think,
win over them.
Win the day and win the leadership.
You raise a really strong point there, man.
Any thoughts on that, Jordan?
Yeah, no, the next leader of the Liberal Party is going to have to be fluently bilingual. It's just there's so much base of support, fundraising, organizing for the Liberals in Quebec, that if you can't go and speak directly to them, it'll be tough. Now, previous Conservative leaders have come into office as leader and have really worked on their French, have learned on it, but that's after spending quite a bit of time in Ottawa, doing many tours through Quebec, talking to Quebecers, talking to Quebec media. So, yeah, you can learn it as you go, but in Christy Clark, starting from this point, it's going to be very tough. But let's add another element on Christy Clark, too, who, since she's left office, has been quite ambitious about looking for a political home for herself. Obviously, she's now settled in the Liberals, but it wasn't 2 years ago that she took out a Conservative Party membership for this.
Taube Jean Charest.
Taube Jean Charest.
Exactly.
And was speaking at conservative conferences. So now I'm seeing, her backers are out there saying, "Oh, she's been a federal Liberal her whole life." Well, I mean, they're forgetting those couple of years where she took that out to Taube Jean Charest and speak at conservative conferences. Right. So I think she's somebody that's been looking to kind of keep her name out there in many ways, but I anticipate she'll fall in the single digits of support once the race gets going.
All right. When we come back, I have to ask Chris Sims, Alberta Director, Canadian Taxpayers Federation, about what we're hearing from some Liberal MPs about the carbon tax. Chris mentioned the carbon tax going up April 1st. And now that Mr. Trudeau has at least one foot out the door, you're hearing Liberal MPs say things that they would never say before. Like maybe we should axe the tax. When we come back, this is our Newsday panel. I'm Rob Snow, News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Here with Chris Sims, the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, Jordan Paquette. We are jealous of Jordan today. He's in St. Pete's Beach in Florida today, Senior Consultant, Blue Sky Strategy Group. But Chris, look, you've been in this setting before when you were up on Parliament Hill. The politicians are there and the members of the press gallery are surrounding the politicians and trying to get their scoops and trying to get their sound bites. And yesterday there was this meeting of the Liberal caucus, 6-hour meeting, and they're cornering Liberal MPs, asking about the rules of the Liberal leadership race and what the next Liberal leader has to do, what some of the policies should be. And for example, here's Kevin Lamoureux, who's been doing a lot of heavy lifting on the floor of the House of Commons, defending any number of Liberal policies, like the carbon tax, saying perhaps the next Liberal leader might want to rethink the carbon tax. Let's listen to this.
There's a lot of resistance to the carbon tax. I think that at the very least, we need to, check with Canadians on that particular issue. And if there's a leadership candidate that's thinking about it, I'm not necessarily going to discourage it. I think that we have to put everything on the table. If we fail at demonstrating to Canadians that we cannot be that venue for change, we will not be in government come summertime.
Isn't that interesting? It's amazing what facing political oblivion will do to people's long-held beliefs. Chris Sims, what do you think about that? Could you see the Liberals backtracking on something like the carbon tax?
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised that they haven't done it this week.
Wow.
Anyone who wants to be the next Liberal leader and doesn't want to commit political suicide should say, this is my name and I'm scrapping the carbon tax. It should be those two things out of their face first. Because we just did a poll last year, I think it was, Rob, just before the last carbon tax hike. 70% of Canadians were opposed to that carbon tax hike. 70%. And now look at this fun timeline. Like you were right. Yesterday would have been so much fun. I kind of missed it. So imagine being back in those scrums. So imagine this. You just go through a whirlwind leadership. Boom. You are the Liberal leader and, the de facto prime minister. You're sitting in Parliament as of March 24th. A week later, you hike people's taxes. Then you go on the campaign trail. Knock, knock. Who's there? Carbon tax hike. Can I have your vote? Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, the timing is terrible. It really is. What do you think, Jordan? Could you see the Liberals actually ever backtracking on the carbon tax? Could a new leader of the Liberal Party axe the tax?
Oh, yeah. Just wait for the flip-flops over the next few weeks. It's going to be...
You think so? You think so? Really?
To watch. Absolutely. No, somebody will. I mean, listen to Kevin Lamoureux, who literally has just, for the last number of years, sputtered off every single government talking point, yet not having gotten into cabinet himself. Now he's even talking about, okay, well, let's go ask Canadians about it. Well, I think the best way to do that...
Let's go ask Canadians what they think about the carbon tax. So a 27-point lead for the guy who says axe the tax isn't evidence enough about how people feel about the carbon tax.
Yeah, then why didn't they have an election if they were so, held up on the idea? Right. But yeah, you're going to see them twisting themselves in knots trying to run away from certain points of the Trudeau record. But what the Conservatives are going to do, quite rightly, is point out that every single one of these people, if provided they're in the Liberal caucus, and including Mark Carney, who's been advising from the outside, have backed this policy, have backed increasing the tax when it comes in April, as Chris mentioned. So no, they're going to twist themselves into pretzels over trying to get away from certain things. I do see them completely backing away on some of these policies, or attempting to. But I think Conservatives will do the job of making it stick in Canadians' minds. That it's not really anything new at all.
Okay. When we come back, we will talk about Danielle Smith, the Alberta Premier, who will be attending Donald Trump's inauguration, spending a few days, as a matter of fact, in Washington. I believe she said 5 days in Washington, D.C., making the Canadian pitch. It's really been Danielle Smith and Doug Ford, kind of a tag team, on making Canada's pitch on tariffs and economic cooperation and energy partnership, all of these things. But some people question whether Danielle Smith should really be going to Donald Trump's inauguration. We'll talk about that when we come back. Newsday panel on News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel with Jordan Piquette of Blue Sky Strategy Group and Chris Sims, the Alberta Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. So since you're out there in God's country, Lethbridge, what do you think of Alberta Premier Danielle Smith attending Donald Trump's inauguration, Chris?
Well, frankly, somebody has to. And right now, Ottawa looks like a hornet's nest that's been kicked too many times. People are pretty busy. So I think it's smart for Premier Danielle Smith to go down there, represent Albertans, try to get our interest across, hopefully represent more of the rest of Canada as well. The one, of course, thing is keep your expenses in line. Don't be staying at a $6,000 per night hotel room like Prime Minister Trudeau did when he went to the Queen's funeral. Keep things in line. But frankly, she's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. She's doing a lot of media hits on this and trying to get Trump to come around and ease up on these tariff threats, which are super real.
Okay, because Chris Sims and her cohorts, they will be asking for the receipts.
Oh, yes, we already sent in FOIs. Yeah.
You got Trudeau in Washington at Carter's funeral right now. I wonder what.
But there are some.
Piano was played
but there
night.
but there are some people who think, given what Donald Trump has said about Canada becoming the 51st state and all of this rhetoric about Canada and the prime minister as the governor and all of this stuff, using economic force against Canada, that Danielle Smith shouldn't be going there and shouldn't be spending time in Washington. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I don't really think boycotting in this particular place does anybody any good. I mean, to Chris's point, somebody has to be present. There's a complete vacuum of leadership in Ottawa right now. You have some of the premiers that are out doing media. I've been down here in Florida watching U.S. News, and Doug Ford's been on more than any government official, kind of make the case. I think had it not been for the wildfires, and he was going to do the rounds on CNN last night too. So it's really important that they take these opportunities to get down to Washington anytime they can and really make these cases, because it's going to be that approach from premiers making that common sense case to the Americans that's going to have them back down from some of these threats. Simply boycotting in these cases because they don't like something Donald Trump said isn't going to be the best approach.
Okay. When do you think the election is going to be? Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
I mean, at the height of the Cold War, like Reagan met with the Soviets. Like, let's be adults here. Of course.
Right. Okay.
Needs to go.
Sure. Yeah. Good point, Chris. Yeah. Good point. Good point. So when do you think the election is going to be, Chris? When do you think the election will be?
I
like
think it's
days after the House gets back, the government's going to fall on a confidence vote. Is that what you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's third Tuesday of April. I think it's going to be
third Tuesday of April. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
All right. Jordan?
Yeah, I would say the first chance that opposition has to get it done, they will make it happen. I mean, first thing has to come back for the throne speech. A couple spending bills so government can fall at any point. So yeah, absolutely, it'll be into late April, early May.
Yeah.
And you think Singh is serious this time? Jagmeet Singh? You think he's serious this time?
Yeah,
he will defeat the government.
Yeah, his pension
by then. Okay.
And end of February. Right. So it's less of a wild card at that particular point.
Less of a wild card. Okay, interesting. All right. Thanks to the both of you. Well, except for you, Jordan, because you're in Florida and we're jealous of you.
Yeah, boo.
It's very cold here in Ottawa.
I'm going to go live out my inner Jimmy Buffett now.
Okay. Remember, sunscreen, my friend. Sunscreen, okay? Do take care. Thank you, Jordan. No, great to hear from you today. Yeah, enjoy your stay down there. Jordan Paquette, St. Pete's Beach, Florida today. Normally joining us from Ottawa and out in Lethbridge. Thank you, Chris Sims. We'll speak soon. Bye-bye.
You betcha. Bye, Snowman.
In Lethbridge. Talkback is coming up right after the news. Your calls, a hot topic today. Right after the latest breaking news here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talk Back. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. Today's topic is climate change. And here's a question for you to kind of get the conversation going. How important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? How important is it for you that the next government, whatever party happens to form the next government, how important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Would you say it's very important to you? Would you say it's somewhat important, or would you say it's not important at all? Just what would you say about the fight against climate change? Is it something that's important to you? Our call-in line is 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. A few reasons we want to jump into the topic of fighting climate change today. One of them is because of the news out of California. I mean, the terrible scenes all over the news, all over social media, the wildfires in the Los Angeles area. And the debate is already well underway now. The flames aren't even out. The debate is already underway. What caused the fires? Why were they so bad? What role did climate change play? Did it play any role at all? Was it poor forestry management? Was it incompetence by local officials? All of the above. And those are debates that have happened in this country and will be all too familiar to some. All across the news media, many stories about those terrible fires and what role climate change may have played. All you have to do is look at the headlines. For example, the BBC headline today, climate change. What role is it playing in the California fires, it asks. Another one, climate change, big culprit in California fires, say scientists. Canada's National Observer, climate change came for my family in California this week. Climate change came for my family in California this week. So you get the idea. Climate change is making wildfires even more wild. And look, we've had our share of wildfires in this country, recently. Jasper, a third of the town's structures destroyed, one of the most expensive natural disasters in Canadian history. Nova Scotia, 2023, terrible wildfires, Barrington Lake, Tintallon, and the debates about the factors that caused those fires are the same kind of debates that are happening now about these fires in Los Angeles. Climate change, bad management by officials, reckless human activity. But certainly what's happening in California right now, big news story. And look, climate change is part of the story. Climate change is part of the story. That is not all the climate change related news, however. Then there's domestic politics and what's happening in this country with the Liberals and the soul searching now that is going on about one of their top policies about climate change, the carbon tax. Some Liberals are now openly talking about rethinking the carbon tax and maybe even scrapping it. That a new Liberal leader should axe the tax. For example, take this Liberal MP, Kevin Lamoureux from Winnipeg, been in the House of Commons for a long time, first elected in 2010. Okay, so he's been there a long time, and for the longest time, day after day after day, month after month after month, year after year, he has stood in the House of Commons and he has defended the carbon tax. And lo and behold, now he is saying that Mr. Trudeau's about to leave. Hey, you know what? Maybe it's time to check in with Canadians and find out what they think about the carbon tax. Roll tape, David.
You know, there's a lot of resistance to the carbon tax. I think that at the very least, we need to check with Canadians on that particular issue. And if there's a leadership candidate that's thinking about it, I'm not necessarily going to discourage it. I think that we have to put everything on the table. If we fail at demonstrating to Canadians that we cannot be that venue for change, we will not be in government come summertime.
Isn't that something amazing? What facing a political wipeout will do to some people and their long-held political beliefs. But he's not the only Liberal MP saying those kinds of things. This was Cody Blois yesterday.
Do you think the new leader should get rid of the consumer carbon?
Sorry, David. I just wanted to say he's a Liberal MP from Nova Scotia, asked by a member of the press gallery, should the next Liberal leader get rid of the carbon tax? And this is what he said.
Do you think the new leader should get rid of the consumer carbon price?
Look, I'm someone that fought very hard to actually get that price adjusted. I'm open to those different ideas. I think that there are certain constituents in my riding that would like to see that happen. There's others that actually really value the program, the fact that it has a rebate. My focus as a member of Parliament will be there's different ways to be able to go about fighting climate change, and if a leader wants to be able to change that, I would fully support it.
I would fully support it. Oh, isn't that something else? Another convert. Now, according to some Liberals, because they are staring electoral disaster in the face, all of a sudden, there's more than one way to fight climate change, and maybe you can fight climate change without a carbon tax. Sounds kind of like the Conservatives to me. But speaking of Pierre Poilievre axed the tax to fight against climate change, Justin Trudeau, just on Monday, during his news conference when he was announcing his intention to resign, he said that electing Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives would mean abandoning the fight against climate change.
Pierre Poilievre's vision for this country is not the right one for Canadians. Stopping the fight against climate change doesn't make sense.
But he's on the way out, and now some of his own MPs are willing to say out loud the next Liberal leader should rethink the carbon tax. Okay. But it's all about climate change. And how important is it for you that the next government continue to make fighting climate change a priority? Very important, somewhat important, not important at all. Have your say at 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that to our call screener, and we will make your call a priority. It's Talkback on a Thursday. 1-833-668-2577. Your call's next on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Change the topic of the day. We're asking, how important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Very important, somewhat important, not important at all. Have your say at 1-833-668-2577. Up first today is Rudy in Cambridge, Ontario. Hello, Rudy. What's your opinion, Rudy?
Yes. Good day. Yeah, I think climate change is important. They got to work on it. Anybody that cares about their grandchildren and children beyond that should care about it, because the way things are going, like you say, the wildfires in Alberta, what we had out east, northern Ontario, California, Brazil the other year, that's all because of the climate change. So they have to work on it for sure.
Okay, so you would say it's very important?
I'd say it's quite important, yeah.
Quite important, okay.
They can't put it on the back burner anymore. They got to work on it, no matter what party's in there.
Right. So let's say, for example, because all the indications are that the Conservatives would win the next election, you would still like them to take climate change seriously, that government?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Rudy, thank you for your call. Got us off to a good start there. Let's go to John in Nova Scotia. Hi, John.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Hi, John. What's your opinion, John?
My opinion, yes. I have grandchildren. Climate change is very important. I live on the coast, near the coast, rather. I've seen the difference I'm 67. I've seen the difference, the change in climate. However, Rob, our government, especially the Liberal government, loves to pull the science card out of their hat when it suits them. However, when our professors and other educated people and scientists say, well, you know what? Canada could go all electric and it wouldn't make an iota.
I see. Okay.
If the world is not on board,
right.
Do, and in the meantime, look at what has happened to the cost of living, the cost of buying anything.
Right.
It's skyrocketed. It's put many people in desperate
times.
Positions.
Yes.
It's causing extreme anxiety among the young people. It's all you hear when you turn on the radio. You know, it's ridiculous.
Okay,
so that's
but you still think it's very important, though, that the next government continue to make fighting climate change a priority, though.
Well, let me define. It's important, yes, but it's like saying, okay, Nova Scotia, we're going to jack up the price of gas $2, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and the rest of the country does nothing.
Right.
It's not going to make a darn difference.
Yeah.
You know, we got the big neighbor across the south of us, drill, Rob. We take our raw materials, and that's including fish, minerals. We dig them out here, we send them across the ocean or the border, and we buy back finished products.
Okay. All right. Very interesting comments. Yes. Thank you so much. We have to keep it in perspective, I think, is one of the points that you're making, John. I'm going to take another one from Nova Scotia, Dartmouth. Rick in Dartmouth. Hi, Rick.
Look, fighting climate change is like fighting old age. It just ain't going to work. You're going to die eventually.
Not going to work.
And
okay.
I've studied this since day one. I was not a climate freak, an environmental freak. everything environmental.
You're an environmentalist.
For big time. And I've studied
okay.
this from both sides of the coin. And I'll tell you right now, humans are not old enough to know any better, all right? And the younger you are, the less you know. And if you go through the historical climate record, all right, which is pretty spacey, all right, when they tell you the average temperature of the Earth was a certain amount in, 1924 or 1935, that's only from information that it is in a very small area, mostly in the United States. So the rest of the world, wasn't involved in that. And to actually be able to tell the temperature is another thing. But I'll tell you, I have a mea culpa. It was back in 1979. I wrote a song called "No Can Do" to protest the Point Lepreau nuclear power plant, and I did that because of basically the same reasons that people are complaining or worried about climate change. I followed the wrong people, and it seems to me now everything I said in the song turned out to be absolute crap. Except maybe one thing, Point Lepreau in an earthquake zone.
All right.
But everything else in my, and I went.
So look, the liberals, for the liberals, I mean, climate change was a priority file for them. So you think the next government should what? Totally reverse course?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Do
All
be
right.
great.
Interesting.
And the rest of the world, look, China, India, Russia, that's like, I don't know, half of the world's population. They're not worried about it. And if you study the stats, okay, over the past little while, you find out that in the 1930s it was way hotter than it is now. Okay, the climate goes through cycles, and that's what we're in now. We're in a warming cycle.
I guess I don't want to get into whether climate change is real or not real. What I want is to get into is, should it be a priority for the government? That's my question.
The government is absolutely wrong. Anyway, I'll just leave it.
Okay,
there.
all right, I got you, Rick. Thank you. All right, we'll be right back with more of your calls. If you hear someone hang up, that'd be your cue to call. Means there's a free line at 1-833-668-2577. Talking about climate change today, the politics of climate change, government policy. Join the discussion, will you, here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How important is it for you the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Very important, somewhat important, not important. What would you say? Steve in Calgary, thanks for calling, Steve. What would you say?
Well, if the life was on life support, shouldn't I be hungry when I say that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first of that. What would you say?
If the planet was on life support, shouldn't I be hungry when I say that? See, people don't know anything about Earth or its empirical data that goes back 12,000 years on agricultural production, mostly because people are lazy. And the problem with the climate debate, and then I'll get on to why I called, is that they don't look at all the data for a reason. They want to control the narrative, which is as anti-science as it gets. But this is my point. In Calgary, we have a park called Nose Hill. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It is massive. It's the largest urban park. Now, what happened was, in our early history, it was taken out of agricultural production because 3 out of every 10 years, it would get held out. So they gave up farming it. And all the city councils up until the 1960s knew you don't build houses up there because it's in what David Phillips, you know this guy, Canada's chief climatologist, said that's called Hell Cell. But they put in all these buildings anyway. So then I say to the government, well, why can't we change the building code? If you're going to be in this area, why don't you make the building code a rubber roof? How come we don't have triple glazed windows? Why isn't that part of the building code like Manitoba? The bottom line, what I'm saying is, if you're going to deal with the climate, stop building houses in the middle of a forest or on a floodplain. This is how you deal with the climate. Because the carbon dioxide in the air right now is there for the next 100 years. So whatever efforts you do in 2025 will not have an effect for another 100 years.
So if it's going to be a priority, you have to change the approach and more to, for example, for you, urban planning would be one way to approach
you change
the climate
building
issue.
code, you change where you build, and don't worry, you're not going hungry. Because
thank you, Steve. Got to move along. I want to fit in another one here. Okay, Karen, you're on the air. Karen, should the next government continue to make fighting climate change a priority? What would you say?
I would say no, not at all.
No, okay. Why not?
Well, I think there's bigger issues, and actually the bigger picture is because I think the shiny object is, climate change. Everybody's looking at climate change. No one really knows what to do about it. But the really big picture, the next problem down the road, which is going to emphasize everything, is population control. Because as population increases, the resources are becoming more valuable. And whether it's water, whether it's resources, minerals, oil, whatever, in order to maintain our lifestyle, those things are going to become increasingly more important.
Okay, so not important at all, in your opinion. So if a conservative government won the next election and said, fighting climate change is not a priority for us, you would be okay with that?
Well, I think I agree with Rick, the earlier caller, who was saying that it is, again, emphasizing climate change, which, climate's been changing forever. It's been changing forever.
Right, yeah, but the scientists are worried about it's getting warmer and it's getting faster and it's never been like this before. That's what they would say. So, okay, we'll wrap it up there, though, because we're up against it here. Thank you for your call. Join the discussion after the news on Talkback.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yes, it is. The fight against climate change, our topic of the day, as we ask, how important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Would you say it's very important? Would you say it's somewhat important? Would you say, you know what, it's not important at all? Have your say. Call in line 1-833-668-2577. One line available for you. Renee, up next. Renee, you're on the air. What's your
Hey, how you doing this morning, Rob?
I'm good, Renee. Thanks for calling. What would you say?
I'd say it's not important at all. I personally think that after having looked at all of the evidence, once you get away from the scientists who are agenda-driven, that you'll find the climate has always changed. It will continue to always change. If you wanted to make a policy on pollution and pollutants in the air, pollution in the water, that would make far more sense. But this nonsense about climate change, I think it's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on mankind.
Okay, certainly big news these days. I mean, you have these terrible wildfires.
Yeah,
Renee, in
Rob,
California,
Rob,
you've had terrible wildfires in Alberta and Nova Scotia, British
absolutely,
Columbia, and the debate
management
is all over the place again, right?
Rob, poor forest management is not climate change.
Yes.
And so to blame poor forest management in Jasper and make it climate change that there was a fire that took, unfortunately, part of the city away, that's not climate change. Climate has always changed. In fact, if you look at some of the data that isn't given to you by agenda-driven scientists, you'll find that, number one, this is the lowest point for CO2 in a long time in Earth's history. Why do they pump CO2 into greenhouses in order to affect growth? We're starving our plants. I'm not going to get into, as you say, the idea of whether it's real or not. I'll just say it's poor policy. And there are other things we could spend our time and money on. It's a con job, just so they have control.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Funds.
Okay.
That's my thought.
Okay, thank you. I will tell you, I mean, there's going to be an election. Thank you, Renee, for your call. Thank you. There's going to be an election probably sooner rather than later now, with the Liberals searching for a new leader to replace Justin Trudeau. The party's way down in the polls. And now we have some Liberal MPs saying things out loud that you never used to hear Liberal MPs say things like this. Let's play. This guy's been a Liberal MP for 15 years from Winnipeg. Kevin Lammer has been defending the carbon tax since day one under Mr. Trudeau. This is what he told a news reporter yesterday. Listen to this.
There's a lot of resistance to the carbon tax. I think that at the very least, we need to check with Canadians on that particular issue. And if there's a leadership candidate that's thinking about it, I'm not necessarily going to discourage it. I think that we have to put everything on the table. If we fail at demonstrating to Canadians that we cannot be that venue for change, we will not be in government come summertime.
I mean, that's a Liberal MP. Maybe it's time to rethink the carbon tax. One of our signature policies in the fight against climate change. Maybe the next Liberal leader should think about scrapping the tax or axing the tax. Man, what a novel idea. Maybe we should ask Canadians, find out what Canadians think about the carbon tax. Incredible stuff, really, to be hearing. Ken in Calgary up next. Ken. Hi there, Ken.
Hi, Rob. That's just another Liberal flip-flop, if you ask me. I think that it should be part of the equation, but it's not the only factor. There's an interesting fellow that people can go onto podcasts or read about, a fellow by the name of Bjorn Lomborg, who is a environmental economist. And people may have heard of him, but basically he says, is climate change a concern? He says, yes, it is. It's a concern, but it's not the only concern that we have, and we shouldn't be using that as the only metric that is out there in order to make our decisions about whatever it is that we do, because in essence, we're making ourselves poorer and not continuing to, help ourselves flourish economically. He says that we can. There's all kinds of things that don't factor into decisions that Mr. Guilbeault perhaps would make. Things like the innovation, how we can innovate. Vehicles running more miles on a gallon of gasoline, for instance. Different types of energy, and making energy go farther. It just doesn't make any sense when you have, the German chancellor or whatever it is that he's called, the president of Greece and Japan all coming to Canada saying, we'd like to buy our your natural gas, and our prime minister at the time, and I guess still is, saying, you know what, there's no business case for that. Well, we were in Europe. I'll finish very quickly. We were in Europe just before COVID, and the air was black. We were there in the wintertime. The air was black because they're burning so much coal. If Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Guilbeault were so serious about climate change, they would have been falling all over themselves to sell natural gas to those countries, so that it mitigated the amount of black smoke that was in the air from burning coal. They're not serious about this. They never have been. And
should the next government be? Should the next government be serious about it?
I think it's one factor. So no, not completely. It's not the only factor that they should weigh in their decision making, but it's part of the equation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you for your call. Great to hear from you today, Ken. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577. Climate change. Join the discussion on climate change and whether the next government, whether that is a Conservative government or a Liberal government or an NDP government, should continue to make fighting climate change a priority? Share your opinion, please. Love to hear it on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How important is it for you the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Our question for Talkback today. Eric in Cole Harbor. Eric, you're up next. What's
Hi,
your
Rob.
opinion,
How
Eric?
you doing, man?
Hi, I'm good, Eric. Always good, yeah.
Good. Anyways, I think that we should change our thinking about this. I think we should use the word adaptation to, I heard a lot of your callers say a lot of really good things. We are in an interglacial warming period, and it's not going to change until we're out of this period. Things are going to even become more prolific than they are right now. I'm going to give you a small example of what I'm talking about. Have you ever looked at the farming situation in Saudi Arabia?
No, believe it or not, I have not talked about or investigated farming in Saudi Arabia. No, you'll be surprised to hear that.
You'll be amazed at what they've done to transform the desert. They've become a beef-producing powerhouse and a poultry powerhouse. And as you know, the climate that we're in now is creating a lot of drought situations in the United States. So through irrigation and desalination plants and learn how to make it rain. Now, this isn't the exact figures, but just to show how prolific they've increased their farm production, they've gone from 400,000 acres to 4 million, we'll say. That's how big the variance is. So you look at the United States, and they've used up all their groundwater, so now their aquifers are dry, and they're having droughts. And they're having tremendous problems like in Texas, Nevada, Arizona, and all these states with great sinkholes now because they've used up their groundwater. So the Pacific Ocean isn't that far away. So why couldn't they adapt the same techniques that the Sauds have used? Now, let's look at our infrastructure. I always use this example ad nauseum, but when they had the floods in New York there a while ago, their infrastructure is only at 1.74 inches per hour, and it came in at 3. So we're in a situation where things could get warmer, could get worse, and we have to learn to adapt to those by taking preventive measures. It's absolutely important that we do that, and also clean up the pollution and stuff like that. We just have to think about it differently than what we're thinking about it right now.
All right. But should it be a priority? Should it be a priority?
Absolutely.
It should be. It should be.
Yeah,
okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. But no, we can't be doing it the way we've been doing it. We should do it a different way and focus on adaptation, you say. Okay. I got you. Thank you very much. Tim is in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Tim. Hello, Tim.
Hi, Rob. Either people have forgotten or don't know that Southern California environment is all artificial. Up till about 1900, that whole area was desert. Until they diverted rivers and water into the area. So it's just a case of the Mother Nature taking her desert back. I mean, it never had water. Unless, to blame climate change for water diversion is wrong.
Okay, well, certainly you'll read multiple news reports today alone about how human-caused climate change has contributed to these wildfires and made them worse, more intense, all of this stuff.
No, it's when you try to change a desert into something else and you don't have the water to keep it up. How many trillions of gallons of water have been diverted to Southern California?
Yeah, I wouldn't know the answer to that. I guess what I'm trying to get at is certainly under the Liberals. I mean, let's play the clip of Mr. Trudeau from Monday. He mentioned this in his,
Please not.
Let's listen to Mr. Trudeau from Monday at his news conference when he was announcing his plans to resign. Play that quick clip there, David.
Pierre Poilievre's vision for this country is not the right one for Canadians. Stopping the fight against climate change doesn't make sense.
Stopping the fight against climate change doesn't make sense. In other words, if he was still running the show and he won the next election, climate change would still be a priority, and he's warning, I guess, that it wouldn't be a priority for a new government, a conservative government. I'm asking, should it be a priority? What do you think?
Not at all. See the mess up
Not
we're
at all.
already in 10 years? Let's concentrate on the economics. Start building things, manufacturing. Too much service, not enough manufacturing.
Okay. I'm not here to defend the Liberals, don't get me wrong, but I think the Liberals would say, well, we are manufacturing and we're getting into the manufacturing of the future, Electric vehicles. Tony, right? Look at all the money the government is going to invest into electric vehicle plants, primarily in southern Ontario.
Did you buy your EV yet there, Rob?
Not yet, but I'm not ruling out the idea of buying one day. I can't swing it right now, to be quite honest with you. A little too pricey for me, but.
Yeah. You never know how far.
I've thought about it.
Yeah. Anyway.
I've thought about it. All right. But not a priority. Should not be a priority at all. Okay, Tim. Thank you. I got to run. I'm tight on time, and I got jam-packed phone lines again today, which is great to see. Great to see that you're interested. Climate change. That is the topic of the day on Talkback. As the hour flies by, but there's a full hour still ahead. Don't worry. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about the fight against climate change today. We're asking, how important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Very important, somewhat important, not important at all. Tony is in Halifax today. Hi, Tony. What would you say, Tony? What's your opinion?
Rob, I'm going to make 3 quick bullet points. I know you're jammed up. Listen, 1, I don't think it's important. 2, the Canada provides or contributes about 0.025% of the actual carbon emissions. Last year, 24, or rather prior to 24, it dropped down by 0.1%. With money spent already for the first year. With the actual rebate, the rebate goes to virtually everyone. And a lot of people don't provide to that rebate. And most importantly, the actual tax that we have right now goes into the general fund. There is not a dedicated fund. And you know, as I know, that when it gets in the general fund, it can certainly contribute to other things other than climate change. There's no dedicated fund for that money from the carbon tax. I've checked that over and over and over again. That's all I got for you, Rob. Pardon me, Rob.
Okay.
You have a great day.
So
Thanks for listening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tony, for calling. Chris is in Kitchener, Ontario. Hi, Chris. What's your opinion on the importance of fighting climate change?
I'm just wondering, so who are we actually fighting? The fight against climate change. Are we fighting ourselves, or are we fighting the Chinese, or South Americans, India, all the people that really pollute? We're not fighting them. We're just fighting ourselves.
Okay.
And we're losing.
Okay. So should the country abandon this as a priority to try and reduce Canada's output of greenhouse gas emissions, for example?
Maybe down about item number 5 or 6, but don't do what we're doing now. We're really bankrupting ourselves, and people paying all this extra money for carbon tax and whatever. Like I said, April 1st is going to go back up again. But we're not fighting anybody. We're fighting ourselves. The people that are responsible for all this stuff, they're getting away scot-free. How many coal-fired plants can you build in a day, type of thing? Not in Canada. We're, like the guys before me said, 0.02, whatever. This is ridiculous.
So what we've heard from the Liberals is, well, we have to be leaders. We have to set the example. Why would people listen to us if we have to practice what we preach?
Nobody in Canada, especially in the government, is a leader of anything. We're not going to be leaders. No one's going to listen to us. We don't have a lot of population. How can we be leaders? Not even the Americans think that we're leaders of anything. They're going to come and think they're going to take us over. No, but we're not leaders. No one's looking to Canada for anything. We don't set a good example.
Okay. Thank you for your call. Wow, that was a very busy hour. Let's continue it into hour number 2, shall we? Of Talkback, as we talk about the fight against climate change, our topic for the day. How important is it for you that the next government continues making that fight against climate change a priority? Very important, somewhat important, not important at all. Love to hear from you. Join the discussion in hour number 2. It's coming up right after the latest breaking news here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Climate change, our topic of the day. Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback, where we've been asking, how important is it for you that the government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Would you say it's very important, somewhat important, not important at all? It's certainly big news these days. Terrible wildfires in California, domestic politics in Canada with Liberals out loud, Liberal MPs contemplating axing the tax, suggesting that maybe the next Liberal leader get rid of the carbon tax. But how important is climate change and fighting climate change? How important of an issue is it for you? Because there's going to be an election. Liberals will have a new leader. Maybe that leader axes the tax. Who knows? Maybe it proves to be a winner for the Liberals, gets them back on track. The New Democrats have started questioning the need for a consumer carbon tax, even though they supported it 100 times over the years. But even now, you hear it from Mr. Singh. He's saying maybe the carbon tax wasn't such a great idea after all. And of course, you know the position of the Conservatives, and Pierre Poilievre axed the tax. That's always at the top of his list. Axe the tax, axe the tax. He said it so many times, you're probably sick of hearing it. But that doesn't mean he's going to stop saying it between now and Election Day. Let's go to Chris in Halifax. Thanks for calling, Chris. You're on the air. What would you say? What's your opinion, Chris?
I really firmly believe that the carbon tax or the climate change policies are not a high priority based on there's no information, like Tony said in Halifax, to where's the money going? You know, some of it's coming back to people, but it's not to all people. And one thing I'll say to that is a very high-level financier in this country that I know said that it's basically a means to monetize carbon as a universal thing. Carbon's in everything, as a means to tax the populations and commoditize it, and that's where it's going to go if it goes. But I think the majority of let's say Canadians or even people around the world, baby boomers don't care. The younger generations are scared to death because they've been indoctrinated, and my generation, Generation X, is ready here and waiting to fight it because we've done the research and there's no accountability to where it's going. So why are we paying it? And what is it actually doing?
Well, and I'm not here to defend a very unpopular Liberal government, but I think the Liberals might say, well, if you want to look at where we're making investments in the fight against climate change, we are investing heavily in electric vehicle manufacturing. Right? Battery plants in Southern Ontario. We're making, just let me finish, okay?
Yep.
Public transit investments, okay? Getting people out of their cars back onto public transit, certainly pouring a lot of money into things like electrifying public transit bus fleets, these sorts of things. What else? Improving building standards, heat pump programs, very popular in your part of the country, right? Mm-hmm. Heat pumps, getting people off of furnace oil into heat pumps, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I listen, I understand that, but to the same token is what happens if something like let's say a major solar flare, we've seen some of the most major ones ever this year. What if it takes out our power grid? What's protecting our power grid to electrify the vehicles? And then we're all stuck, right? Not going. Look at California right now. Did you see the EVs that are all lined up that couldn't charge when the power went down in the Palisades? Unbelievable. That's going to change people's opinions. So I think the climate is telling us that we need to go in a different direction that is environmentally protective. Protecting our environment, our air and water, absolutely. I don't think there's any human being on this planet that doesn't believe in that. But the climate, we're going to change it with money. It's not going to happen. And we don't know where the investments, we're told where the investments, but there's no accountability or paper trail to it. And I think Canadians would like to see that before they commit to it fully.
All right, Chris. Great points all around.
And
Thank you so much.
One last thing, Rob, is climate change going to change your last name to Rain?
No, it will not. No, it will not, sir. Okay, good joke. Okay. Dan Veer up next, calling today from Calgary. What's your opinion here, Dan Veer?
Hey, Rob. The first thing is, like, when you say stop fighting climate change, but where's the fight? Like taxing people, is that a fight? Is that what you call a fight?
Again, just as I said to the last caller, the government would tout all of these investments that it's making in order to try and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, sir. I hate to, keep repeating myself, but whether it's electric vehicle battery plants or investments in public transit, heat pump programs, rebates so you can get more energy efficient homes and whatnot, these sorts of programs, sir.
So when you go for energy efficient homes, right? So they had a plan for the furnace replacement. Okay, so they were not paying for the replacement of the furnace, but paying for the checking of the house, if
to do an energy efficiency audit or whatever, right?
Yeah, right. So, you get the audit done because the government is paying, but then how many people actually bought that furnace? So, what is the practicality? What is the outcome? Is anybody even checking that? Just writing on paper to make things to make it better. That doesn't help. So on your part on the EV, it's so much investment on the EV thing. How much is the part of the pollution or the greenhouse gases that the cars are doing? The cars are emitting. Right? There are other things that are pretty high on that, and that can be targeted more specifically, like the trains, the ships, right?
Transportation is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, there's no question about that. Transportation,
how
also
much
emissions from buildings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
How much diesel, and those guys use not even refined diesel.
Okay.
They're using HSD.
So let's, just because we're a little tight on time, let's circle back here and get back to the original question. It's been certainly a priority. They haven't stopped talking about it since they first took office for the Liberals. Fighting climate change is a priority. It's the greatest threat humanity faces. How many times have you heard stuff like that from this government? It's quite likely there's going to be a new government. Should it continue to be a priority?
To your point that you have to be leader to set an example, right? How many leaders actually, instead of traveling, burning fuel, jet fuel or whatnot, rather they could have done the meetings on Zoom? They have been doing during COVID. Why didn't they give that a priority? Why are they traveling to all the way for the vacation? Why can't they just go?
So would your answer be it's not important? Would your answer be it's not important?
I think there is no fight to start with. There's no fight.
There's no fight.
The continuation,
I got you. Thank you.
Matter.
I got to go. Dan Veer, we're out of time. Thank you. Other calls to get to. And 2 lines available. I'll take yours. I'll take a deep breath first, though. 1-833-668-2577 is Talkback. It's Thursday already. My gosh, the week is flying by. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
How important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Mary in Ayr, Ontario. Hi, Mary. What's your opinion, Mary?
For me, it's top priority.
Top
I
priority.
guess I'm old enough. I have grandchildren. I have my own children, and I'm old enough that I've seen the changes, and it's not that we haven't had changes and different climate peaks and valleys historically, but these are happening so fast and they're so severe and causing so much damage that we can't stick our heads in the sand. It won't, Rob, it won't affect me in my lifetime. I will be gone before the true impact actually hits our children, our grandchildren. So I don't vote this for me. I do it for the next generation. And hopefully, I don't know that things like the carbon tax are the answer. But hopefully we don't on the back burner and pretend it's not happening.
Okay, when you say, you're old enough that you have noticed changes over time, what kind of changes would you say that you notice?
The seasonality, the seasons blur into each other now. And as a child, I grew up in Toronto, and as a child, seasons were quite defined. And that doesn't happen anymore. These firefighters listening to what's going on listening to what's going on right now in Los Angeles. These are unheard of and catastrophic occurrences. And though we don't like the cost of addressing climate change, we're paying it in the cost of restitution, our insurances, what we're losing.
Like pay me now or pay me later, right?
Exactly. And you can't buy back this type of loss. So it's just, is it the right thing to have a carbon tax? I don't know that that's the answer, but we have to do something.
All right. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're in the minority today, Mary. Thank you for calling. Leanne is up next in Kitchener. Hi, Leanne. What would you say, Leanne? What's your opinion?
Hi. I am in 100% agreement with your last caller, Mary. I feel it's utmost important. I'm in exactly the same situation as she is. It's not going to really affect me, but I think for the future generation, I think that we have to make the young people aware of this. If we just give up the battle, these young people won't even know about it. We have to educate people.
I think they're fully aware. Probably more aware than most.
Yeah, but they're not taking action, right? Like, I think they have to, they are aware, but they have to take action. And a lot of them just don't want to pay for the price, right? So I totally agree that it's got to be utmost important. Carbon tax, perhaps they should have reframed it a little bit and maybe not called it a tax. I don't really...
they've never called it a tax. They call it, the Liberals. No. If I could just interrupt there, the Liberals have never called this a tax. They call it a price. People don't like taxes. I don't know about. I don't know about you, Leanne. I don't like taxes.
No.
People in political speak. It's kind of diabolical. Let's not call it a tax. People don't like taxes. Let's call it a price. Okay, it's a price
how I
on
understood
carbon.
it, and I could be wrong. How I understood it, though, was it wasn't revenue generating. It was supposed to it was going back. 90% of it was going back to lower and middle income people.
Well, that's their claim is that 90% is rebated back to the public, and their claim again is that most people are better off. Although I've done show after show, and a lot of people think that that's hooey.
Right. Yeah. Yes, and how do we know? I guess that's the problem, is how do we know? But whether or not we have to do something about it, and I think we have to actually take some action, and just because other people are saying, the United States aren't doing well, I think we have to do something. That's my opinion.
Okay. All right. No, that's why we do the show, Mary, or Leanne, sorry.
That's
Leanne and Mary
right.
are on the same page. That's okay. All right. Thank you. We'll stop here. Dan is in Red Deer. Get to you. Andreas as well. Dave in Halifax. If you're on hold, you'll be on the air shortly. That is my pledge. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Where we've been asking how important is it for you the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority in Red Deer. Today, Dan, you're up next. Dan, what's your opinion?
Hi, Rob. To answer your question,
the Liberals should take everything they've ever done on climate change and throw it right in the garbage.
Okay.
And nothing but hurt everybody on businesses. From, carbon tax, investments in battery plants, all that is just hurting people money. Pierre said it best, and I've been saying it for years. If we increase our LNG productions, and let's say we increase our carbon footprint by 2.5 instead of 1.5, but we reduce the emissions of the world by 4%, well, it wipes our entire country off the face of the planet in carbon footprint wise, So we should be looking at going at it completely different. We should be investing billions of dollars into AI because the technology, I'd be fine with a carbon tax if we had a viable option to go towards, to help push people from one thing to another. But there is no option right now. And, in the next 10 years, AI is...
It's funny you mentioned AI. I mean, AI, if I could just interrupt there, AI is very energy intensive. I mean, the energy that it takes to run these data centers is just
it's crazy.
Massive. If you look now at actually the greenhouse gas emissions from these big technology companies, whether it's Microsoft or Google or Amazon, because of their investments into all of this AI infrastructure, I mean, they're rivaling big oil companies now, these emissions. And their emissions are going up in the tech sector, not going down.
It's only going to get worse. No, exactly. But, I really believe that in the next 10 years that AI will have the answer we've all been looking for, whether it's some form of energy that's sustainable, and we just haven't discovered it yet. It's like having Einstein work for every other technology company in the world. So I think it's going to be there, and we're hurting our people, and we're investing in the wrong thing.
Gotcha.
So,
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to take another call here in Okotoks. Andreas, what would you say, Andreas?
Hello, Rob. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. What's your opinion?
My opinion is, honestly, Rob, I don't think climate change is on top of mind for Canadians. I just want to point out that all the policies that the Liberals have introduced in the last 10 years have brought us to where we are now. And I think most people could agree that our economy is not in a good place. People are suffering, and it's been at the expense of people to try and save, quote, the climate. I understand being an environmental steward, as an Albertan working in oil and gas. It's the most regulated and supervised oil and gas production in the world. So, and you had mentioned also the EVs and all of the investment the Liberals had made. Let's look at some of those. How are the plants doing, or even the companies that are using EVs? Like, they're all slowing down production of electric vehicles, and here we are going full force producing electric batteries. Who's going to use those when the cars aren't being produced? Or Edmonton buying $80 million worth of electric buses from a company that went back. Well, what's going to happen? Is that all?
Oh, sorry, Andreas. I think your phone dropped out there. I missed the last part of what you said there. Go ahead. Just the last part of what you said. I heard what you said about electric buses. I just didn't hear what you said after that.
The electric buses. Yeah, I don't think it's feasible for us to keep down this road, at the expense of people.
Okay. Thank you so much for your call. We have to stop here. The news is coming up next, and then more of your calls as we talk about climate change and climate change policy in this country. The way the political winds are blowing, could be a change in government. What should the next government do when it comes to the fight against climate change? I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Climate change all over the news today because of the situation in Los Angeles. We also have domestic politics at play when it comes to climate change policy in this country. We've been asking, how important is it for you that the next government continue the fight against climate change? Is that a big priority? Is it very important to you? Is it somewhat important? Is it not important at all? For example, David, I was looking at, this is a poll from last summer from Abacus Data, David Coletto there at Abacus Data, and he was asking, what are the top 3 issues facing Canada today? What are the top 3 issues facing Canada today? What do you think number 1 was? What would you say? Top 3 issues.
Healthcare? How old is this poll? Healthcare? Yeah.
6 months. Say 6 months old.
So, okay, so probably inflation and then healthcare.
The cost of living was number 1. Number 2 was housing affordability, which is kind of related to the cost of living, really. And number 3 was healthcare. Climate change was 6th on this list of the top issues facing Canada today. Climate change had fallen to 6th, overtaken by another hot issue, which was immigration. Immigration, top 5 issue, according to most Canadians. People are more concerned about immigration than they are about climate change these days. But that was last summer. Then in October, some more recent, the same polling firm, Abacus Data, issued a note saying that concern about climate change, according to its polling, had dropped 14 points in a year. Wow. From 76% of Canadians who said they were concerned about climate change, it fell to 62% in a year. And more Canadians said they were only slightly concerned about climate change than the percentage of Canadians who said they were very concerned about climate change. And personally, what I would take away from that is climate change is something Canadians worry about until they have more important things to worry about. And more people are worried about being able to afford groceries or paying the rent or paying the mortgage or making it to the next paycheck. And of course, liberals can read polls too, Dave. They know what's going on. And now you have some liberals saying, well, maybe the next liberal leader might want to rethink the carbon tax. Now that Justin Trudeau has one foot out the door, and with the Liberal Party on life support, there are some liberals who are suddenly brave enough, like Cody Blois, and we have some audio here, this MP from Nova Scotia, Liberal MP from Nova Scotia, who advocated for that carbon tax carve-out that they gave to people in Nova Scotia. 3 years, you won't pay the carbon tax. Please keep voting for us. Well, now these liberals are suddenly brave enough to stand in front of a television camera and tell a news reporter, you know, maybe it would be wise if the next leader of the Liberal Party, whoever that happens to be, rethinks the carbon tax. Play that clip, David.
Do you think the new leader should get rid of the consumer carbon price?
Look, I'm someone that fought very hard to actually get that price adjusted. I'm open to those different ideas. I think that there are certain constituents in my riding that would like to see that happen. There's others that actually really value the program, the fact that it has a rebate. My focus as a member of Parliament will be there's different ways to be able to go about fighting climate change, and if a leader wants to be able to change that, I would fully support it.
Don't you love that? He says he fought to get the price adjusted. No, the price is still the same, buddy.
I love that. I love it.
It's just the people who use furnace oil don't have to pay it.
Yeah, it's not a carve out. It's an adjustment.
Clever language,
yeah. So smart.
Yeah. Liberals can also read a calendar, David, because here's the deal. Just look at the calendar. Chris Sims from the Alberta Canadian Taxpayers Federation in Alberta. House of Commons comes back March 24th. Right? It's prorogued until March 24th. 8 days later, what happens?
Carbon tax goes up.
Carbon tax goes up again. Yeah. From $80 a ton to $95 a ton, an increase of 18%. Yes, the rebates are going up too by a similar percentage. But between March 25th and April 1st, there is a very good chance that the government is going to be defeated on a matter of confidence and the election campaign will be underway. The Liberals hoped to have a new leader in place by then. And this is what's staring them in the face. Starting an election campaign having just raised the carbon tax again. What kind of gift is that going to be to the Conservatives? So that's why you have some Liberal MPs saying things that you've never heard them say publicly before. Like maybe we should axe the tax. Axe the tax. Meantime, the current Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, says if you axe the tax, you are giving up on the fight against climate change. We are asking, should it remain a priority? Climate change policy, should it be a priority for the government? Tracy in Nova Scotia. Hello, Tracy.
Hi, Rob. Thank you for taking the call.
You're
depending on where you live, all the other things, all important issues, degradation of the shoreline, the waves, all those things have an impact. My thought is climate is a serious concern. I think erosion, saying we'll fight against climate change, is a misnomer. I've not been able to figure the logic of the carbon tax. Are you able to do that? No, nor
am I able to figure out the logic of the carbon tax? One of my problems with the carbon tax is the whole idea of a carbon tax. I always thought was it was supposed to operate the same way a sin tax operates with tobacco or alcohol. That it's supposed to make it, change people's behavior. But for example, nobody gets a rebate on their pack of smokes. When they're paying a tax, they pay on a pack of smokes.
Exactly.
So where is the incentive to change one's behavior?
I'm confused about that.
Yeah, you're not the only one.
I would like to see respective scientists and politicians work together to report on the challenges and the opportunities for climate change together. I would like to see what happened in COVID. We had a premier that met with the official folk that was head of the medical, and people listened to those people. And not that they were perfect, but I would like to see a hands-on between the two of those people to tell us really what is happening with climate change. And if you think about Trump, he sat there and said, you can drink whatever and get rid of COVID. And the God lover, the doctor, sat there, knees together, and freaked out. And so I think that a lot of people would benefit from that.
Okay. I have to wrap up our conversation there, Tracy. I thank you so much for your call today. We'll be right back. We're in the home stretch here now of a very busy Talkback today as we talk about climate change on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Here with David Smith in the home stretch of Talkback, where we've been talking about climate change. And funny enough, David, this fits nicely into the conversation. Actually, I just saw on my social media feed that the Rideau Canal is opening on Saturday.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Just got the breaking news alert about that.
Yeah. So that's, of course, an iconic part of Canada's capital, and it's actually been at the center of the climate change debate in recent years because the skating seasons have been getting shorter. And what was it, David? It was a few years ago, year before last. Maybe it didn't even open at all.
It was the year before last. Yeah, year before last.
people were like, "Oh, that's a sign of climate change."
Because it was the first time ever
couldn't
in the history that it didn't
First
open
time
at
ever,
all.
yeah. Since they started having a skating season on the Rideau Canal. So about half of it will be open on Saturday. But here it is. It's January. In some parts of the country, it's darn cold. So, of course, we're talking about climate change and just where that stands as an issue for you. Certainly been a top priority for the Liberals, that's for sure. But the Liberals aren't popular right now, and there's a very good chance there's going to be a new government after the next election. How important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? In Stratford, Bruce. Hello, Bruce.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm good, Bruce. How are you?
Good.
That's
so I have
good.
a few
What would you
points.
say?
First of all, I'm a farmer. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And here's my point. I have chickens on a farm that when they come in it has to be 90 Fahrenheit. And every time I buy propane, there's 12 cents a liter tax on that. So I guess the principle here is they're supposed to put the tax up every year in order for that a guy like me doesn't use as much propane because I'm polluting the environment. My question is, how am I supposed to do that when if I turn my heat back, my chickens would die? If I have chickens in my barn at 90 Fahrenheit, and I even turned it back to 85 degrees for the first few days, those chickens wouldn't even eat properly. So my opinion is, why does a farmer that has a diesel tractor on dyed diesel not have the tax applied? But why do some of us farmers that have heating for chickens, turkeys, eggs, and or some of the farmers out there that have drying for corn, why are they taxed?
Okay. Now, when
that's my
are,
point. Okay.
Oh, fair enough, Bruce. But let me ask you a question. When you pay the carbon tax on your propane, are you rebated that carbon tax?
No, I am not. No.
You don't get a rebate on that?
No, I do not. No. Well, okay. Let's just, I'll give you some numbers real quickly. 65 feet wide, 500 feet long chicken barn would be about 10,000 liters to fill the 2 tanks. Probably at this time of the year with this cold weather right now, you're good for maybe about 10 days. That's it.
10 days.
And on that 10,000 liters, my friend, we're talking $1,200 in tax in 10 days. Now, yes, I get rebated. I get my, what is it? $200 check in the mail, and I'm supposed to feel happy about it. Yeah, you can see a guy like
but
me.
You're not getting like, that's what I wanted some clarification from you, Bruce. Like, you're not getting, I don't know what you, like a commercial grade rebate on your carbon tax.
No. The only thing I'm getting is I get a bigger tax deduction when I do my taxes. That's what I get. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing, real quickly, if studies have been done to show that this tax isn't helping our environment, then why isn't it just thrown out immediately? I'll tell you what I think. It's a tax grab. The government has spent that much money that they need the money from this tax to pay off all the other things that they have been doing not very well. And we know there's all kinds of things because we should have been at 40 billion and we're at 60 billion, and that's with all this tax money coming in. So I hope Pierre Poilievre can make a difference, but I'm not sure how he's going to pull a rabbit out of his hat to fix this $60 billion deficit by taking away the carbon tax. Should it be changed? Absolutely. Should it be there at all? I really think sometimes it should not be there at all. But I'm not quite sure what's going to replace it because we got ourselves in a pretty deep hole here right now with our debt.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. Good to hear from you.
Have a good day.
Yeah, we'll be right back. A few more calls, and then we'll wrap things up for today. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yes, it is. We've been asking, how important is it for you that the next government continues to make fighting climate change a priority? Tom is in Cambridge. Hello, Tom. What's your opinion on this topic today?
listening to a lot of your callers there, Rob, I'm more thinking of if the environment is affecting the climate, why aren't we looking more at the environmental issues that are affecting climate or global warming? And why have governments, on one hand, started to do the Green Initiative, then take back the Green Initiative? I lived in British Columbia and never experienced heat out in British Columbia as I did out there because it's a dry, arid climate. And 200 forest fires was a wake-up call for me, never having to experience that. I lived on the East Coast where if you lived in rural areas, your choice of heating your homes were either electric, propane, wood, or heating oil. And a lot of the homes down there aren't insulated properly. So if you want to create more industry in that, they're going to need more natural resources of water in that. So why aren't we looking at more ways to be more environmentally friendly? The climate tax or global, whatever you want to call it, hasn't really done what it's supposed to do. So no, it's not a real priority.
Not a priority. So if there was a change in direction with a new government, you would be in favor of that?
I'd be in favor of it. Again, why would you? A climate tax, as you said, was the wrong thing to call it, and it doesn't benefit everybody because the old government money to the government, you're not going to see that $250 or $300 rebate that you're going to get, as in the GST as well, because they take that off the top. But environmentally, if the environment is affecting the temperatures and all the wildfires in California and the forest fires across the world, and you're going to burn down the rainforest and that, those sort of are the common denominators that are happening in the world. We should take more of an interest and be a little more concerned about that and what we could do more things to be more environment friendly.
All right, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you
for your opinion. We're not going to bring on any more callers because there's only about 45 seconds left here. But look, I really appreciate all your calls. I'm actually surprised by the feedback and just how engaged people are on the issue of climate change and climate policy and certainly the carbon tax. And, given just the political situation in the country right now and where things are headed, this will not be the last time we discuss these issues. I hope you'll join us again tomorrow for our final Talkback of the week. It's always a lot of fun on Friday. We do the Friday free for all. So we've been coming up with topics all week. A lot of those topics have had to do with the future of the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau and his record and his legacy and who is going to replace him. And of course, Donald Trump and the threat of tariffs, or maybe even more than that. And we can discuss all of this tomorrow. Or we can talk about whatever you want to talk about because it's the Friday free-for-all. So we'll be wide open, open line, open topic. Hope you'll join us then when we come up with some new topics and take some more calls. And as always, cover the latest breaking news. In fact, we will do that in less than a minute from now. I'm Rob Snow. You're with David Smith. This is News Radio.